Here's Johnny.
Okay, so Matt, this is part one of our two-part Stephen King. I can't say extravaganza because it's not quite as big as Harry Potter.
No, we've graduated from Hogwarts.
Yes, but it's quite in depth. We are going in depth. We've got 6 films to discuss today, and more next time. So Stephen King, for me, I was only introduced to him as an adult, and I never read Stephen King as a child.
Yeah.
Probably wouldn't have been allowed, to be honest.
It's quite grown up, isn't it?
I know a lot of people read him as a kid, and hence their fears, and why they find him so scary is because they read him as a child, which I kind of miss out on, actually. I wish I had, because that maybe I would have got that thrill. But I only started with Stephen King in 2017. I don't know if I'd seen a lot of Stephen King either at that point. I'd seen The Shining. I think I'd seen Carrie and The Green Mile and his main stuff.
Yeah.
It's only as I've got older and got more into reading and things like that I've kind of seen the link, and you just think, oh my God, this guy's prolific.
And it's weird that you can kind of have your attention turned to him from the films first. Obviously we're quite filmy people, and I guess that's what I've just started to do as well. I've just bought 13 of his books.
A lot of very pretty new paperbacks.
Oh, they look so good. And I've just started reading The Shining. I'm about halfway through. You can tell he's got a way of writing that, I don't know, it's just something in the words. And I know that sounds really basic, but yeah.
Well, there's a reason he's so popular. That is going to be our approach today. So we are going to come to the films from the themes, basically. So there are a number of themes that are very much Stephen King tropes that he does very well, that he does repeatedly and come up time and time again. So that's how we're going to approach it today, from the themes and how they shape the films.
Yeah.
So we're kicking it right off with Carrie.
You can stay here with me. I don't want to stay with you, Mommy.
Yeah, it's weird because we covered this briefly in our quickfire Halloween episode. So I've kind of said what I wanted to say already, but now I've got a chance to kind of elaborate a little bit.
Yeah.
It's a different kind of horror film in the sense that the monster isn't really the monster. So Carrie White, played by Sissy Spacek, is this innocent and gentle, and she's almost angelic, even in look. She's this angelic schoolgirl, but she's really shy. She's not particularly popular. She doesn't really fit in, which I think is one of Stephen King's trademarks, really. It's this focus on people who are outsiders, especially young people. In the opening scene, we see her get horrifically bullied in the showers after gym class, because she gets her period, and she's 16, so it's quite late. But the way that all the other girls react and sort of push her into this corner and throw tampons at her and stuff, and
horrendous.
It's not great, yeah. And again, links in with another huge thing is bullies, and the fact that bullies are completely evil and irredeemable. So bad things are going to happen to them. This triggers a series of events that plays out throughout the whole film, this prank that they're going to play on Carrie. And it's from here she starts to display these telekinetic powers. And again, trademark, these supernatural abilities that people have arising from their inner demons.
Yeah, big themes.
It's a shame with Carrie, though, because she's so innocent.
Yeah, I think that's what makes it more complex than just a generic horror, because there is a lot of depth there. Carrie isn't your normal, like you say, she's not a monster.
Yeah.
She's driven almost to these things.
The only person who really stands up for her is her gym teacher, Miss Collins, who's actually really, really good for Carrie. She kind of picks her up, stands up for her, champions her, makes her feel special, and she's a bit of a badass actually, because she like slaps the I call her Regina George, I think she's not called that in the film. Proper slaps her and stuff. He really puts them in her place, which is great. But her troubles at school are only half of the problem, so she can't just run home and escape the problems, because on the other hand, Margaret White, who is Carrie's mother, preachy, religious fanatic, another trademark, judgmental, close-minded, cruel, hypocritical witch.
Pretty much sums it up, doesn't it, really?
And she's not very supportive at all. So when the school calls home saying that this incident's happened at school, she actually beats Carrie to the ground with a Bible, accusing her of sin. It's not funny. Accusing her of sin, and then drags her through the house by her hair and into the cupboard. It's just terrible. And it's not just that she's sheltered from the world, but she's imprisoned from it. Mm-hmm. In terms of Carrie being the monster, it's everyone else who causes her outbursts, and you just feel sorry for her. She's Frankenstein's monster, in a way.
I was literally just about to say that. Yeah. Literally took the words out of my mouth.
And then the other thing I just want to talk about is the prom scene at the end. This love among the stars prom, and it looks so good. I mean, it reminds me of films like Grease and Back to the Future, where they have a school dance.
Yeah.
It's magical. And to Carrie, it's magical as well, even though people are still pointing fingers and giggling every now and again, and she's too nervous to even do anything other than sit at a table. This is freedom for her. It's magic.
Yeah.
The closest she's ever felt to being normal in her entire life. And she's with this boy, Tommy, who seems to genuinely like her, and then they have this nice dance, and everything just falls away. It's just him and her, and it's lovely. And then they get announced as prom king and queen, and as an audience, we know why. And again, best thing that's ever happened to her. It's this slow motion, sumptuous shot of her, tears in her eyes, walking up to the stage. But we know how this is going to go. And the instant the bucket falls, the way the film turns from that moment, the slow motion stops being glorious, it starts being agonizing. Brian De Palma's directing here, stuff he does, the split screens and the kaleidoscopic kind of lenses that he does, and the colors, the red and the blue and all that stuff. It's really quite interesting because it hasn't been that way for the rest of the film. So, but yeah, basically, long story short, Carrie massacres the entire school. And that's a bittersweet ending because, like you said, Carrie's been driven to this. It's not how we wanted things to go for her.
Nope.
Literally anyone can die, which is another theme. Like, nobody's safe in any of these stories.
Yeah.
So yeah, the prom scene I absolutely love, and it's a big chunk of the film, really.
Yeah.
It's not a long film. Yeah, and it's set in Maine. I'll just drop that in at the end just because.
Yeah, he's from Maine, Stephen King, and he does set an awful lot of his books in Maine. There's a lot of Maine in his work.
So yeah,
it's an interesting first work for him.
Yeah,
it's not what you would call maybe a mainstream idea. It's more indie. It's very effective, though, with what it wants to do.
Yeah, it covers a very small slice of time. There's only a few key characters, and like I said, it's not very long either. It goes so fast that you get to the end, it's like, I can't believe it's already here, but I love it.
Yeah, but it very much covers some of his big themes that come up time and again with his work that he will revisit and revisit.
I really like the film a lot. If I was to do like a top 20 of my favourite ever films, it would be in that.
Really?
There's parts of it where I think, okay, that was a bit weird, but it doesn't detract from my enjoyment of it.
Yeah.
Hardly a complaint.
Okay, so that's number one.
Yes.
Our second film for today, The Shining. I apologise in advance because there are an awful lot of themes in The Shining.
It's a big old film.
My grandmother and I could hold conversations entirely without ever opening our mouths. She called it shining.
I think everybody's seen The Shining. It's become part of the horror zeitgeist. Everybody knows The Shining. There are lines that people know are from the film Red Rum, Come Play With Us, Danny, and most famously, Here's Johnny.
Yeah.
And it's often said that it's one of the scariest films of all time. I don't think that's because there are that many scary moments in it. I think it's more this atmosphere and the feeling that's built throughout the whole film, this foreboding and this feeling of unease that's just built all the way through. The intro music is powerful and foreboding, so it starts you off that way. And I think some of the other themes early on are very eerie. And then there's a maze in there in the grounds. We're made to feel like the hotel's also very much like a maze, with Danny cycling through the halls and this colour palette that gives the film its completely unique look. I mean, the carpets are horrendous. I mean, who
pretty horrible.
Picked out those carpets?
Speaking on carpets, in the book, they're blue. When I read that, I was like, Well, I'm going to imagine it as red because that doesn't seem right now.
Yes, exactly. I think that there's very much the book and the film were two different things, and it's well known that Stephen King didn't like the film because of the way that Kubrick decided to go.
Yeah.
So the biggest theme in The Shining is an unexplained evil force. There's lots of awful things happening in the hotel over the years. Some of which we see, the dead woman in the bath and the twins killed by Grady, the blood spurting from the lifts, and room 237 seems to have this concentration of evil there. And it's the room that Dick Halloran is frightened of and tells Danny to stay away from. And it's also where Jack sees the woman in the bath. And it's when Wendy suggests that they have to leave the hotel for Danny's sake that things turn most sinister. That's the evil force suggests that Jack must stop them from leaving in the form of Delbert Grady. Jack speaks to Grady in the bathroom and he asks him if he was once the caretaker. And he says no. And Jack says he recognises him from the newspaper. He killed his family. And Grady tells Jack quite clearly that Jack is the caretaker and has always been the caretaker. I should know, sir. I have always been here, which is more suggestions of this sinister force. This thing's always been there. So Grady tells Jack that his daughters didn't like the Overlook and one tried to burn the hotel down, but Grady corrected her. And when his wife tried to stop him, he corrected her too.
Could be some kind of history repeating itself here.
And shows us that he was corrupted by the hotel, just like Jack is being corrupted. And by the end, even Wendy can see the things in the hotel. She's not really seen anything. It's been Danny that's seen things. And I don't know if Jack even sees that these things are weird, that they're odd. He just seems to accept these things. But Wendy's not really
He's
been involved.
He's almost in a trance, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly. He's been front and centre. And I think as well, there's the picture right at the very end. What does that mean? Jack's front and centre, July 4th ball, 1921. Like, how is that possible? Because of who he is. But does that mean he's forever become a part of the hotel? Is it kind of like enveloped him into this force?
There's a lot that's open to interpretation in the film. And I guess even at the end, you could choose to go, they all just had cabin fever. It doesn't really mean much, you know?
Yeah, but there's a lot there. Another theme, obviously, is the psychic and supernatural abilities that appear again here. Danny has a being, Tony, who lives in his finger. Yeah, I know, when you put it like that, it sounds really weird. But he tells him things. So Danny knows things about the hotel he hasn't been told. And Danny converses with Dick Halloran, who was the cook, who is also psychic. It ran in his family and his grandmother had it, and she called it Shining. Hence the title. And they can communicate without talking to each other. And through his abilities, Danny can see things that other people can't. So he sees the twins and he sees the river of blood, and he's more susceptible to these things. And Halloran as well, with his abilities, he sees from his home in Miami, which this is in like the Colorado mountains, I think. So he's a long way away. He can see awful things at the Overlook that terrifies him. So he travels back. So there's this running of psychic abilities all the way through. Another theme, now this is where we get into the book versus the film, is the alcoholism and substance abuse. Now, that is a huge part of the book, and you're reading the book at the moment, so you'll be seeing all of that. You'll remember it a lot better than me. But that's what he wrote the book about. Kubrick does not go that way with the film.
No, not really. It kind of gets to the point where he's having a drink, but not really dependent on the drink.
Yeah, so it's hinted at. He looks at an empty bar. He says he'd give his soul for a drink, and he's then served from the full bar by Lloyd. So at this point, I think that's when he gives in to drink. That's when we know that he's taken a path and he won't be coming back from it.
He's lost it.
Yeah, so there's only hints there. And from the drinking comes in the abusive parent theme. It's hinted at all the way through. That Jack's previously hurt Danny.
Yes, something in the book is quite foregrounded.
It's hinted quite a few different times through the film. So Danny asks Jack if he'd ever hurt Danny and Wendy, and Jack says, "Did your mother tell you I would?" And hints at the previous event that that he's immediately defensive. So something's happened. And Danny's hurt by something later on in the room 237. He's all bruised and his clothes are ripped and torn. But Wendy thinks it's Jack. Straight away, she doesn't doubt it, suggests basically that something of that nature's happened before.
In a way, I guess the hotel kind of turns them on each other as well, because they're isolated, and how could anything else possibly have caused these things?
Exactly. And then Jack admits to Lloyd he accidentally broke Danny's arm 3 years ago by pulling him violently, and that it was an accident, it was a mistake. But then by the end, he's gone full abusive parent and is trying to kill Danny and Wendy through the evil force that's persuaded him that they need to go. And then there's the last theme, which I'm going to discuss, which is writers and their issues. Jack's a struggling writer, we're told. He has writer's block. He's going to use the quiet time that he has at the hotel to write. And we see straight away he's very reluctant for any of his work to be seen. He's verbally violent to Wendy when he's interrupted.
I quite like that scene. I don't know why. I think it's quite good.
Yeah, he's not very nice to her at all.
No, he's not, no.
And it's through his writing that Wendy learns the truth, that Jack's truly lost his mind. All he's written for pages and pages and pages is all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. So that's the moment of like complete horror where she realises, oh my God.
Yeah, and for how long has he not been normal?
This guy has lost it.
Yeah.
And that's when things really start to ramp up. She knows she's got to get out.
Yeah.
So I think there's so many of his themes in it. It feels like a Stephen King film, almost like no others. The best way to look at it is to separate the book and the film, because the film is fantastic. It's a fantastic piece of work. And there's so much open to interpretation. Like you said, it's definitely one to watch. It's a Halloween favourite, shall we say. We're then jumping ahead a little bit to 1986 and Stand By Me, which is one of Stephen King's novellas. It was based on his novella, The Body.
I'm never going to get out of this town, am I, Corey? You can do anything you want, man.
And this is absolutely a coming-of-age tale. It's really well liked, this one.
Yeah, it's got that 80s feel to it, proper 80s classic feel to it.
And it's one of those that you can just tell right from the start that Stephen King, he writes kids so well.
Yeah.
It's like he can just get into their heads and how they think. So the first theme, the biggest theme throughout the entire film is the coming of age. The kids are 12 going on 13. They're growing up, they're learning things about life. So Gordy has experienced loss, his brother dying. And Chris opens Geordie's eyes about how his family's reputation will keep him from getting anywhere, about life's real prejudices that kids don't really think about, but they're starting to grow up and see these things, see life as it is.
Yeah.
Another great theme in this, which comes up often in King's stories, especially the coming of age ones, is the power of friendship. So all the boys in this, they are there for each other and support each other. Chris and Gordy have this clear, obvious bond, which is lovely.
When I first saw it, at least, I thought it was going in a different direction. And they were really close.
Yeah. I think they just understand each other.
Yeah.
They have this clear understanding that the other boys don't have.
Yeah.
Chris stops Teddy at one point from dodging the train, saves his life. There's issues going on for some of these kids.
It's like they're the only ones that are looking out for each other.
Yeah.
There's no one else in the picture, really, for them that's doing that.
Yeah, and Chris tries to persuade Gordy that writing isn't a waste of time, and that's just his dad talking, God gave him a gift, so he's got to use it. That's a huge thing. I mean, these kids they're only kids, but that's a very adult way of thinking.
It's almost like Stephen King's writing to himself. He writes about kids and kids' fears as if he was tackling his own.
And this is set in Maine. This is actually set in King's fictional town of Castle Rock. So they're from Castle Rock, all these kids. And it's very much small town life in the 1950s. Which is the time that King grew up. So he knows this. He knows this time, what it was like. He's writing what he knows. He's writing his childhood, which is fascinating. Again, here you get bullies. which very much, again, some of these themes come hand in hand. You know, the friendship and coming of age and bullies. Those themes all very much all come together, linked in when he uses them. So you've got Ace, played by Kiefer Sutherland, who's an absolute dick. I've got to say
Very
it.
convincing.
He's just awful.
Yeah.
And he goes out of his way to terrorize the younger kids. But even with the older ones as well, even with his own friendship group, there is no friendship between Ace and the others in his gang.
No,
he seems to just like
frightened of
tolerate
him.
them in his way, you know, and that's it. It's his way or no way.
Yeah.
You know, he doesn't care about any of them. Awful guy.
Yeah.
And then you also get, again, in this, there's the hint of abusive parents. So we learn that Chris's dad beats him badly, and Teddy's dad scarred his ear, holding him close to a stove as a very young child. There's these hints of abuse all the way through. I think it's interesting that King comes back to that all the time. I don't think he had abusive parents. I think he was left as a child. His dad just
left
ran
when he was
out.
2, I think.
He just said he was going out for cigarettes and never came back.
Yeah.
So and I do that causes issues. I think that very much would stay with you all your life, and it very much resonates in his writing. It's usually fathers that are the problem. Not always. We've had Carrie's mother, but there's very much an issue with fathers.
But she was channeling God. The Almighty Father.
But it's a lovely little slice of life, Stand By Me.
Yeah.
And it's quite sad. I find it really bittersweet at the end, because you learn from the beginning that Chris died. He was stabbed trying to help someone.
Yeah, actually doing good against the reputation that
he actually became a lawyer, which is lovely. And there's a lovely narration in this over the film with Gordy telling us, you know, what it was like to grow up at the time. And I just think it's really bittersweet at the end, because they didn't keep in touch. This bond that all these kids had at this age, you know, and he does say he never had friends like he had when he was 12, but none of them stayed in touch. And that's real life. You don't very often, but it's so sad. It's just so you see this bond that these kids have and how close they are, especially Gordy and Chris, and then to learn that he hadn't seen him for 10 years. Yeah, it's just really sad. I was just thought, oh.
Yeah,
you know.
It is strange, and there's something nice about it, because it's a very quiet setting, very picturesque setting, and it's you know, they're just going on a hike, really. I know they're going to find a body, but
they're going to find a body. Yeah,
but fundamentally, even if you never had that, it takes you back to some time, you know, some kind of formative time in your life. But one thing I read, Stephen King did see a friend die when they were hit by a train. Yeah, he doesn't really talk about it, but he wrote about it.
Yeah, but you can see that, though. You can definitely see that in the film. Those brushes with death and with danger.
Yeah.
So that's Stand By Me. Definitely worth a watch. It's one of his more innocent films.
Yeah, they're not all horrors.
No, they're not all horrors. This is definitely very much not a horror at all. But it's definitely more innocent. There's hints of other things in it, but it's more innocent than a lot of his other films.
Yeah.
Definitely worth a watch.
Very good. Right, okay, a couple of years afterwards, Pet Sematary. Now, I hadn't seen this. I was expecting more pets. So, yeah, this is very much a first-time reaction.
What did you do? What did you do?
Main thing I got out of this was the sense of dread and foreboding. And you feel it all the way through. So just looking at the first 10 minutes as an example, you get the feeling that there's a sinister series of events that is imminent. In fact, it's inevitable. It's almost like the universe has already predetermined what's going to happen to this family. This
is actually what Stephen King considers his scariest book.
Okay, that's interesting.
He was not going to publish the work. He put it away in a desk drawer. Because he thought it was so awful.
It's pretty dark.
It was just so dark that he just didn't think it should be published, and he was persuaded to, but he wasn't going to. This is what he considers his scariest work.
Right, yeah, interesting to know that, because a whole point I've made is about that. So we get the Creed family. They've moved to a new house in a remote setting. Never a good start to a scary story. Also set in Maine, so it's even worse. And there's a series of things that happen right in the first few minutes of the film. Their daughter Ellie runs to play on a tyre swing, and that breaks immediately and she's injured. Their cat starts acting weird, and animals play a pivotal role in quite a few films as well, like Cujo as well.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone's distracted by this cat and then by the girl on the swing. And then I think he's 1 year old. I can't remember. 1 year old Gage. He runs out into the road and nearly gets hit by a speeding truck. And then there's a mysterious old man across the street, someone called Judd. He definitely knows something. Something's up. And he's lived there a very long time. He's seen a lot of people come and go from this house. And something that we'll mention in a lot of films, again, is this town with a dark secret theme.
Yeah.
So yeah, just as like an opening 10 minutes of the film, you're like, there's a path set for them here. You know that something's led them to this point. Again, this unknown force, this universal evil force, like pushing them in a certain direction.
Yeah.
Even after that, I mean, they hire this disheveled looking housemaid who's got this persistent cough, and you just think something's up. And that's the sort of the first point I wanted to make. Just something's always up, and it's this feeling of dread, even though nothing's happened yet. Nothing bad has happened to these people yet.
You're just waiting.
Yeah.
You know it's going to happen.
And as the film goes on, you get Ellie, the little girl, having these sort of psychic abilities. She has dreams and premonitions of things that are going to happen or that have happened to people that she hasn't been with, especially her dad and his mental state and stuff like that. And I was really interested by the idea of the road in this film that separates Judd's house and the family's house. It's not just a road. It's an agent of evil. It's a highway of hell. It's almost like it's luring children and animals into the road. It's otherworldly and evil.
That road is based on a real road. So when Stephen King when his kids were younger, they lived in a house off a road like this. And his son nearly got run over. The same thing that happened to Gage, well, basically nearly happened to his son. He was able to run, and it was like scared the crap out of him because he had to run and save his son. So it very much comes from that.
Okay, yeah, it's very much from experience, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And I love how then although it is just a road and it is just a truck, but he makes these things that are ordinary really quite sinister. And again, another trademark.
Yeah.
Like in The Shining, we shouldn't fear corridors, but we do.
Yeah, it's just a hotel.
Or a hotel door, but we do. Or a maze, but we do. So in this one, it's like the road and the trucks that are on it. They're kind of these faceless, dehumanized things.
Harbingers of death.
Yeah. There's a bit later on where his wife Rachel's trying to rush back to stop him from doing something stupid, and the tyre explodes, and the ghost of somebody who I'll mention a bit later says it's trying to stop you. The road's trying to stop you. Love that. My second point really was ideas of life after death.
Yeah.
There's a scene in the film where the dad, Lewis, is explaining to his daughter about death because she's asking. Great. And he doesn't believe in anything, but to comfort her, he mentions some of the beliefs that people might have. But you can see behind his eyes, because of the events that are happening in this film, and at this point he has inadvertently resurrected her cat.
Just like you do on a weekend, accidentally resurrect a cat.
I mean, it's the old man's fault, really, because he determined to do it. I guess it was just interesting that Lewis then was questioning himself, everything he thought he knew or didn't believe in. And when his son dies, spoiler,
it is awful.
Yeah, it's really quite dark.
No other film has ever done that. It always nearly does it.
Yeah,
you never see these things actually happen. Yeah, you don't ever see it really, and you think, oh my god, they did it. They went there.
Yeah, when it happens, it's really quite shocking.
The
film kind of then plays with the idea of, if you could bring someone back, would you? But he knows that because he can, that he is going to try and do it.
Yeah, it's that thing. It's wrong.
Yeah,
it's totally wrong. It's not natural. But
because the daughter's put it in his head. She said God could take it back if he wanted to, couldn't he? And that's when he realised that he can play God here, regardless of the consequences. In fact, he says at one point, if he comes back like the cat did, I'll just put him back to sleep. It's not just grief, it's greed.
Yeah, but I think they are hypnotised by grief.
Yeah.
The grief is so overwhelming that
they do anything.
It takes all kind of natural thought away until you're left with just these things that you can't think clearly, you can't make good decisions because you are absolutely overcome by grief.
And that's a good segue actually into just the last point. It's not really a theme. I've just written the word disturbing. I don't really know how else
The whole
to say
film
it.
that pretty much
It's
sums up.
very disturbing, and the dad basically saying he feels like he's going crazy and just not learning from his mistakes, blinded by grief. But his resurrected dead son, who he's already dug up and reburied and all sorts, then kills his wife. So then he buries her to resurrect her, and it just goes
you'd
on.
think by that point, the fact that he had to kill his son, you would think that he'd have learned his lesson from that. But no.
But he's gone past the point of no return, and it's a vicious cycle until everything he loves has been destroyed. But even regardless of, I mean, that's the main plot thread, but the housemaid hangs herself, there's a jogger who gets knocked down and starts being a ghost, and then the cat coming back, that's scary. Then his wife Rachel has these flashbacks to her sister who had this like spinal illness.
The most sinister thing I think in the film. She is
horrible.
I should say
she's played by a man, isn't it?
Yes. Which just makes it more creepy.
It's just hideous, like this convulsing cackling. And then the dead boy coming back. It's like Chucky, it's like, play with your daddy. Running around. Yeah, it's just, oh, God. Having never seen it and not really knowing what it was about, like I said, I thought there was more pets. I thought, show me some cute dead animals, please. But yeah, it's really, really pushed the limit of what I thought and how dark a film could go.
Yeah, it is dark. It's very dark.
It's
so fascinating an idea, though, that idea of grief.
Yeah, it's a what-if story in a way, isn't it? What would you do? What would you do? And that last whole point about things being disturbing links into that anyone can die trademark. Doesn't matter, kid, cat, wife, husband, jogger, housemaid, die, all of you die. So lost my mind. So yeah, that was a lovely little watch.
I bet you felt great after watching that one.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it actually. It was cheap, and I think a lot of his films have been adapted sort of in a Lifetime hallmarky budget.
It's one of those that's become a cult classic. Pet Sematary. It's very much beloved by its fans, but it's very much got a cult status. It's by no means had all this money chucked at it.
No. Well, it's been remade now, and I probably won't watch the remake.
No, don't watch it. Okay. It's awful.
Good, cool. I won't do that.
So we're then jumping on then to one again, not had loads of money thrown at it, and that's Misery from 1990.
Nobody knows you're here. And you better hope nothing happens to me. Because if I die, you die.
And I think it's probably one of people's favourites.
It's a good concept for a story.
Yeah, and it's just it's one of those that creeps up on you forget about it, but everybody goes, oh yeah, Misery. Mm-hmm. It's one of those. It is a really good film. Kathy Bates is something else. She's fantastic.
I have to say this now. I'm just not a big Kathy Bates fan.
That's fine. I love her in Titanic, so I'd
say that's the best I've seen her.
And I do think she very much deserved the Oscar for this. She won Best Actress for Misery this year.
Not over Julia Roberts, but
I think when you talk about the film and the decisions they made for it and why it is the way it is, you can see why she won. We'll go through it. So basically, you've got Paul Sheldon, who's a writer of the Misery Chastain series of novels. So again, this is writers and their issues, the theme coming up again. He despises his work. He doesn't consider himself a real writer. This is just schlock writing, He's put his kids through college and all this, and he's got 2 houses and all this that his agent tells him. Lauren Bacall, fantastic in this. But he just doesn't consider this real writing. So he's finished with Misery and he's written a new book, and he goes to this lodge that he always goes to and finishes his book. Something that he considers proper writing, worthy writing. and he has a car crash because he decides to go out in a storm. He didn't know there was a storm, but I mean, it was like pretty bad snow all around the area.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you just
wouldn't.
It's not a great
Jack
decision.
Frost all over again.
And he crashes the car and he's in a really bad way. Broken his legs in multiple places and his arm and all sorts. And Kathy Bates happens upon him. And
Casually.
yeah, so you think. And she pulls him out of the wreck. How the hell she managed to get him out, I don't know. I know there's a reason for it, and they do explain it in the book, I'm sure, but she's like supernaturally strong. So she pulls him out of the wreck and takes him back to her house and brings him back to health. You know, she bounds his legs and gives him painkillers and all this, and comes across at first as this kind of a little bit kooky person. Very odd, but, you know, fine.
Yeah.
But no, she's not. So
no.
Annie Wilkes is Paul Sheldon's number one fan. She's obsessed with the Misery novels, read everything he's ever written. And it just comes to light more and more that she's not this normal person at all. She has a lot of issues. And it comes to light that she's actually a very, very bad person. That she killed babies in a hospital. She was a nurse and she was jailed for killing newborns. And
She has why.
Yeah, no, it never explains why, really.
Yeah.
But you just keep getting these glimpses of Annie's madness or something not normal. And it keeps showing you these glimpses, and it's always a close-up as well. The camera does very interesting things in this film.
Yeah, unflattering as well.
Very, very
good.
And the camera looks up at Annie, like implying this position of power and strength, which she absolutely does have because Paul is bedbound.
Yeah.
Watching the documentary last night, actually, it was interesting because it's James Caan who plays Paul Sheldon, and what you see is what you get because he was literally stuck in bed for 15 weeks. So some of the looks that you get, you know, is like sick and tired, was just real life because he was sick to death of being confined in this place. So yeah, very much Annie does have this power. And I think what makes her so scary as well is you don't know when she's going to flip. She can turn at any time, and you just don't know what she's capable of either.
No.
Paul doesn't learn about her past killings, you suppose you would put, until
the
later
point where
on.
He's actually trying to get out.
Yeah. By that point,
her,
you know she's absolutely mad. So a theme in this is the biggest theme in this is obsession. Very much obsession. Everything leads from it. All the decisions made are because of it. Annie has lots of issues. You know, she speaks about her husband leaving and being lonely, and finding the Misery books made her happy. So she found this thing and she locked onto it. So Misery's hers. It was, you know, it's this thing. And when she reads that Misery's dead, she gets this new book and she absolutely loses it.
You dirty bird.
Misery, yeah, exactly. As if she's this real person that Paul's murdered her, and she calls her my Misery, you know, and she makes this decision. Annie intends to keep Paul with her. She hasn't told anyone where he is.
I think it's brilliantly written that the character's called Misery. So when she says my misery, you think there's a double meaning.
Exactly. So she intends to keep Paul there, and he's going to write a new Misery novel, bringing her back to life. She makes him burn his new book, which she can. It's all the swearing in it, and it's not worthy, and it's terrible, and it's, you know. A lot of the horror here, it's from obsession, but also arises from these hidden demons, these inner demons that she's had. That are hinted at, because we don't know why she killed babies. We don't know what went on, and it does go into a little bit more in the book, but still, you know.
Yeah, I think it's good though in a way not to give you the full picture.
Yeah, and she has these blues at times. There's a sequence where she has the blues and she's very quiet. And she's got no life to her, and and she has a gun. She says she's going to use the gun. She's going to put bullets in it.
Or she'll just get in the car and drive off.
She has a lot of issues, quite clearly, but she's deranged. She's absolutely deranged, mental. And to be honest, I read the book last year, the end of last year.
Oh yeah,
it is absolutely crazy. They real dialed it down for this. The film is really dialed down.
Oh right, I'll look forward to that then.
the book is insane. She goes so much further.
Oh, good.
So this is like Child's Play, the movie, compared to the book.
Fair enough.
I was like, oh my god. But it's very much, again, the same kind of themes come up. But she's such a great villain. He writes villains so well.
Yeah.
And Annie Wilkes is right up there.
Yeah.
And Kathy Bates was no one at the time. And he wanted it that way. Rob Reiner didn't want a star because nobody knows what a number one fan looks like. This is what he was saying. He wanted a star for Paul Sheldon because he was a famous writer and you would know what your famous writer looks like. But a number one fan's a nobody. You don't know who that is. So he didn't want a star for the part. And Kathy Bates wasn't one at the time. She wasn't known. So I think it was maybe smaller then. But obviously Kathy Bates is a big star now and everybody knows who she is. This is very much a star-making turn for her.
Yeah.
She's the whole movie, really. Okay, so the last one then. Down to you.
Yeah, last one for today. Very, very, very popular. Of course, I hadn't seen it. Is the original It. Now, this is a mini-series, but we're calling it a film. In fact, Amazon Prime, if you rent it on there, there's no gap. It just plays straight through, so it is a film.
Yeah.
So this is from 1990 as well.
Kiss me, fat boy.
And of the ones we've looked at so far, I think this one had the most tropes and trademarks of Stephen King.
Yeah, it's The Shining and It. That's what he's known for.
Yeah.
The people who aren't necessarily fans as well, they would know the name of those two because they're so big.
And quite often the title is Stephen King's It. It's not just It.
Yeah.
Which I found quite hard to write about because I've written the word It so many times.
I know.
In fact, my Microsoft Word has started capitalising the word It anytime I try it anyway. So I'm prepared. In our next episode, I will be doing the remakes. So I will say now that the points I'm making here will be the same ones I'm going to make there, but just obviously see how
we're
the
doing
time
a comparison
difference.
piece, aren't we?
Yeah, exactly. See how they've changed. So I'm going to start by looking at the structure of this film. I haven't read the book yet, so I don't know how the book is structured, but I imagine this is much closer. In part one, it's particularly non-linear, which I wasn't expecting. So we start in the middle of the story where the children are already adults, and we're in a town called Derry in Maine, which is a trademark. A town with a dark secret, which is also a trademark. 6 children have died. We actually see one of them preyed upon by a vision of a clown. And we are introduced to someone called Mike, who very quickly runs to the phone and he starts calling people, saying that it is back. So we're kind of in the middle of something it's not new, and begging them to come back to Maine because something's terribly wrong. Remember your promise. So I like that. We sort of start slap bang in the middle, and we learn in a backwards fashion that something significant and traumatic happened to these adults as children, and as he rings each one of them, we judge from their reaction to the news and watch them kind of unravel back into their childhood selves. So they're all very successful and professional people. One of them is a writer. Remind
me, in this, because I haven't seen it for quite a while, do they actually tell you or insinuate that they don't remember?
Yes, they don't remember until he rings, and then all of a sudden, all of the habits and the fears they used to have as children, and they were, again, a big group of outsiders, almost immediately come back. So one of them's got asthma, and all of a sudden he needs his inhaler. One of them had a stutter, and instantly they all are just reduced, and you think, God, what's happened to these people? Obviously, we kind of know already. It's this It. So individually. as we're introduced to each of the adults, we flash back a little bit of time to go and see how they became part of this group that they call the Losers Club. And again, bullies are a big issue here.
Not even the monster.
Well, that's it, yeah. They spend a lot of time on them and the bullies more than them and the clown.
Which makes it even more of a coming of age as well, because everybody knew a bully.
Yeah, some of the other characters. Ben, he's quite overweight. Mike is African American. Richie wears glasses. Bev's got an abusive father, again, abusive parents coming in. Stan, I'm not 100% sure what his sort of flaw was, but he does kill himself when he finds out that it is back. So
I think it's a weakness. I think he was so scared. That was his weakness. His flaw was he was just scared. He was so scared by it, but he saw the lights, didn't he? He saw something the others didn't see.
Right. Okay.
I think. And it terrified him, and he couldn't cope.
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of part one. Jumping back and forth to them as kids, their first encounters with an evil dark force, trademark, that takes the form of a circus clown named Pennywise, who feeds on children's fears and lures them into the sewers to their deaths.
What's really fascinating is most people were not frightened of clowns before it. Being scared of clowns wasn't really as much of a thing before the 80s.
Yeah, almost like Stephen King has blemished what was something quite joyous.
Yeah, and now so many people
no
are frightened of clowns.
He's a great example of, and Annie Wilkes is too, of the sadistic lunatic villain. They come in different forms. So yeah, part one covers them deciding to confront the fears, confront the bullies, confront it, and then believing that they've destroyed it. And that's a very coming of age thing as well. You know, they overcome their weaknesses, I suppose.
Yeah.
Part two starts from the middle, goes to the end. I've just said here, it's not as good.
Yeah, you weren't as big a fan of the second part.
Great. The hairstyles are scarier than the plot. And why is Bev kissing everyone? And the ending is a bit naff, but a bittersweet ending all the same. Part one's much better. I want to talk about Pennywise,
obviously,
played by Tim Curry. A lot of what he did contribute to why people are afraid of clowns.
Yeah.
And the look of the clown as well. It's a very classic clown look. It's very colourful.
Yeah.
It's not monstrous. He's a sort of humanoid, just a man dressed up, it would appear. But I think that makes his motivations seem even more sinister. Even away from the story, it makes him creepy.
There's almost a paedophilic.
He could be a paedophile.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you said it before me. And the choices in the voice, you know, it's just this gravelly Brooklyn accent. You know, he's like, "Very wise of you, Georgie."
Yeah, he could be just a man.
Yeah, and the smile and the laugh that go in contrast with that, the unpredictability about him. That's very that's very scary, and the fact in general that he's tormenting children and preying on them and giving them visions and stuff. And Tim Curry's great at doing these sort of cult classic villains, you know, Frankenfurter. I say villains, they're not all villains. Long John Silver, Wadsworth, the cult classic films that he just nailed.
He's very much in most of his films is the standout part, even if the film is itself fairly mediocre. He stands out and is of a higher quality.
Yeah. My only complaint really is that Pennywise isn't in the film really very much. He's in it for about 3 minutes, I think.
I think that's why they made much more of the new ones.
Yeah.
I think that was something that they needed to do.
Yeah. In fact, in the opening credits, it said special appearance by Tim Curry, and I thought, oh, right. It's almost like he was a cameo rather than a character, but obviously they did choose to go down the bullying and the friendship route. Instead. So yeah, in the end it doesn't feel much like it's about it, and in a way then the confrontations don't really feel that dangerous and high stakes because you've not really had that time to feel that he's tormenting them enough. And the last thing, which I will mirror in the other episode as well, is the special effects. So this is all pre-CGI.
Yeah.
It's much more creative, practical, and what we'd call special effects, not visual effects. And because they're less smooth and polished and blended into the film, it sort of adds to the horror. A bit like how Pennywise is more tangible. He's more sort of physical and there as a person. It's more like Nightmare on Elm Street. in a way, very
Yeah.
80s kind of horror, and that can be quite scary. But there's so many different things they did. I just wanted to list a couple of ways they achieve it. So more basic stuff, the props, like when the showers come out from the walls at one point, and Stan's head's in the fridge in part 2. They're all just sort of practical things they've done with props. Then you've got puppets and costumes. So you've got the skeleton in the pond and the hand coming out of the drain. Makeup, like the teeth and the contact lenses. And I think her name's Mrs. Kirsch. She's great in the remakes, but the old lady who's not alive.
Mm-hmm.
And things in the editing, like cuts and dissolve, just to make Pennywise appear and disappear. Just very basic stuff that adds in. They slow down some footage, they speed up some footage, they play some stuff backwards, like a photo album that's suddenly moving pages back and forth. And superimpositions, like there's a bit where Pennywise's face is on the moon, or you can see the deadlights in his eyes. And then my favourite one, even though it's not the best in the film, but I like how it's integrated, is the stop motion stuff. So when he has to fit in and out of a tiny drain, he's done as like a clay model going in and out of the ground, and the ground's moving and stuff.
Yeah, they were very creative in terms of what they could do. Because, like you say, they couldn't do a lot of what they would have wanted to do, which made them have to be insanely creative.
Yeah, but like I said, it's very 80s, and it makes me think of other things like Labyrinth, with the puppets, and that did the same thing with some stop motion. So I will be returning to Derry to it, and to see how 30 years later, how they retackled this in terms of the structure and the character of Pennywise and the special effects.
What I think defines Stephen King for me is his ideas, his concepts are fantastic. Even if the execution maybe isn't, top notch, the actual concepts and his ideas for things are something else.
And ideas are always scarier than, they're the things that slither in and stick with you. It's the idea of something.
You can see that with all of the films we've covered. It's these fantastic ideas. And that's why I think he's so adapted into film and TV. At the minute, he is everywhere. The money he must be making, because they are adapting so much of his work. Next time we'll be covering things like Gerald's Game, which is one of his newer ones, and they've just done Doctor Sleep, again one of his newer ones in the last couple of years. He is so adapted, and there's so much more on the slate as well of what they want to do of his work.
And he's still writing.
He's
just churning them out in a good way.
Yeah, he really is. He's very prolific. But it's his ideas. I think that's what it comes down to. Yeah. His ideas are so fantastic, and people just can't get enough of them.
I always forget not just how much he's done, but some things and some films you completely forget that they were him. Yeah. Which is not in any way a criticism, but like we're covering next time, the Shawshank Redemption is one of his. Not a hint of horror really.
But that's great, because it shows how much variety he actually does have. I know everybody says he's horror, but he's definitely not just that at all.
A writer, isn't he?
Yeah, he's done so much. Horror, yes, has defined a lot of his work because of it and The Shining being so big. But there's so many more ideas in there that aren't horror.
Yeah, very, very good.
Yeah, so that's it. So that's part 1. So we've given you an idea of what we're covering next time. We're coming forward, so we are going to be covering some more of his more recent work. This was very much his classics, what got him started, where his fan base came from, the likes of The Shining and Pet Sematary and his fan base is very much come from those works. But we're moving forward for part 2, more to today's Stephen King and how he's adapted by today's filmmakers.
The quality of the filmmaking definitely bumped up from here. I mean, we're covering the number 1 IMDb film next time. Shawshank is at number 1. So should be really exciting.
Yes, it will be very exciting. So catch up with us then. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. Matt, where can they find us?
Well, where can't you find us? You can find us on our website, cinechat.co.uk /podcast, or across the social media Just search for CineChat podcast. That's a tongue twister more than it was ever before. Or you could email us at
podcast@cinechat.co.uk.
So
that's it. Stephen King Part 1. Join us for Part 2.
Yes.
And we'll see you then. It's bye for me.
And it's bye from me.